Hey everybody, Bert from AstartesGaming here, back with another look at the Chronicles of Elyria design journals. Today we'll be checking out number 8, which is all about character roles and skill advancement. So if you're wondering what there is to do in Chronicles of Elyria, this should answer all your questions. This is going to take us through all the different abilities and stats that are in the game, as well as some possible professions that you could take up with those skills. And so for me, this is probably the most important thing in the game, because all these game mechanics are all well and good, but if there's nothing in the game that I want to do, it really doesn't matter. And so if you guys are, sort of in the same thought process, then this will be very enlightening for most of you. Alright, so in most MMOs today, it's common for characters to have a wide range of skills and to hold multiple professions. As going out and gaining experience and levels is oftentimes the only way to raise your crafting professions, virtually every character is required to be some kind of an adventurer, whether they want to or not. On the other end of the spectrum, as we discussed in the last design journal, contracts and player-created professions, the lack of trust inherent in MMOs forces players to become gatherers or crafters in order to get high-quality items. As a result, many modern MMOs require characters to be adventurers, gatherers, and crafters all at the same time. Obviously, Chronicles of Elyria aims to be a little bit different. So let's see. While those ideas may work in MMOs where there's no time limit, in a world where your character ages and eventually dies, that isn't ideal. In the end, the limited lifespan in Chronicles of Elyria means that more often than not, having a small set of specialized skills is better. Plus, it allows players to focus on the area they enjoy most, whether that be exploring, gathering, or crafting. So basically, you do what you want to do, and then you pay somebody else to do what you don't want to do. Let's see, so in part 1 of this 2-part series on skills and the skill system, we're going to talk about how Chronicles of Elyria uses division of labor to allow players to focus on just the areas of the game they want to. After that, we'll talk about the different skill categories, how skill hierarchies work, and the multiple ways players can advance their skills. And so we have a screenshot here, let's take a look. And so this is an example of what a town might look like. You've got the blacksmith building right here. You can see the forge there. You've got like a weapon wheel in front of it, an anvil to hammer stuff flat. And I can't wait to set up my own little like smithy somewhere and start building and crafting. I'm really looking forward to the crafting in this game. I don't know what you guys plan on doing. Definitely let me know in the comments if you've got something else that you'd like to try, or if you're interested in blacksmithing, I'm happy to talk about that too. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to this. All the buildings in this game are going to be, well, not necessarily, there will be buildings already set up, but many of the towns and stuff that you get into later on will be all player built, and so the architecture will all be unique because you've got a different person potentially building every single building, or different groups of people at least. Okay, so division of labor, as we just saw there. Different skills sets require different tools and equipment. For example, blacksmiths need a forge and appropriate tools for working with metal, clothing that won't catch on fire, gloves that prevent them from burning themselves, and a place to store materials before beginning production. In contrast, merchants and miners will often need reliable transportation capable of carrying a lot of cargo or heavy loads. At the same time, travel by wagon is slow and incapable of maneuvering in narrow places amongst trees and brambles. Finally, while blacksmiths, miners, and merchants all have skills in their specific trades, none of them need to be expert swordsmen. I would like to still round out my combat abilities quite a bit, because I'm really hoping that we see some large-scale wars between kingdoms. And so if there is a call to war, I would be more than happy to answer that call, whether I'm a blacksmith or whatever my profession may be. So I do want to work on my combat skills, just because if you're out, say, taking a wagon full of things that you've produced to another town and you get ambushed, it'd be nice to be able to hold your own and defend yourself. But also, like I said, I would like to get involved in any wars that take place. But obviously, if that's something that you're not interested in, you really don't need to do that. You can just focus on your profession and let somebody else, protect you. So these observations lead us to the discovery that we really have 4 different roles in Chronicles of Elyria, which we can call character roles. character roles are divided up into 4 categories: producer, supplier, which is like merchants and gatherers, explorer, and champion. So let's look at producers. The producers are the crafters of the world. They're the blacksmiths, bakers, alchemists, and tailors. In general, producers stay within the safety of a town and rely on suppliers to go outside and fetch the things they need. When they're not crafting, they're selling their goods in a storefront or auction house. Okay. Suppliers, which are further divided into gatherers and merchants, are those responsible for getting necessary resources to producers. Between the two of suppliers, gatherers, gatherers are your miners, lumberjacks, and farmers, and tend to gather the more mundane resources, so the raw materials, basically. Meanwhile, merchants travel long distances in order to requisition the more extraordinary or rare materials. In either cases, it's not uncommon for both merchants and gatherers to use large wagons and keep bodyguards around. So when I was talking about what I wanted to do in this game, I mentioned I'd like to set up near a mine if I can, because obviously with smithing, you're going to need a steady supply of metal, and so if I could set up near a mine and kind of cut down on the supply costs a bit, that would be fantastic. But yeah, so if you're more interested in being like a miner, running your own mine, having guards to, guard not only the mine, but the wagons you're sending out from the mine with all the ore you've dug up, and maybe hiring some NPC miners or some player miners. I feel like if all you did was mining in the game, you might get a little bit bored, but I don't know, maybe not. But obviously running a mining business might be a little bit more fun than just being a miner for that mining business. But to each their own, I suppose. So explorers. Explorers are those who specialize in survival skills, allowing them to be out of town for long periods of time, roaming the Badlands, braving forests, and wading through swamps. They're the treasure hunters of the world. Whether it's an untapped mine, an unspoiled tomb, or a magical tree in the middle of an uncharted forest, explorers make their living by knowing what's where and charting the safest way to get there. So those of you who really, really enjoy the Elder Scrolls games, that might be the profession for you. You just kind of go out and do your Skyrim thing out in the wilderness, and if you find something, you can sell it or mark it on your map and sell the information to somebody. I imagine, there will be quite the demand for maps that have, gold mines and stuff located on them, or maybe like ancient ruins. So there's definitely plenty of potential to turn your exploring into some profit. I know on the forums there's been a lot of talk of like cartography companies, so they'll basically have people with scribing skill that make maps, and then they'll have explorers on payroll to go out and explore and make sure that the maps are accurate and obviously bring back information on where stuff is, and so that the scribes can churn out maps and sell them to people. And I think that's really cool. I really like that this game has the potential for that, where you have this supply and demand going on, where there's something that players might need, so the game is open enough and free enough where you can do something to fill that void, rather than it needing to be a game mechanic to do that. You can just, okay, people need maps. I can make maps, so let's make maps and sell them. I really like that. It's like making your own lemonade stand. Alright, champions. Oops. Didn't mean to click that. Okay, so champions are the bodyguards, sellswords, soldiers, and dungeon delvers of the world. So those of you looking to have more of an Elder Scrolls type experience, you might want to combine your explorer with the champion a bit. Although I feel like champion is maybe too kind of a word. I feel like sellswords being called champions is a bit generous. I mean, you may be honorable and a great fighter, but a champion is like somebody who's like fighting for a cause, not for like, purse full of coin. Anywho, when explorers discover uncharted new territories, it's the champion who proceeds forward and gives the all clear. When the merchants make their way along dangerous trade routes, it's the champion who keeps them safe. As a player, your tolerance for risk and the types of activities you like to do will help you determine which character roles are suitable for you. The issue with champions is that, as we've kind of seen in the previous design journals, dying often is going to shorten your character's lifespan considerably. And so you're going to have to be pretty good in combat. And this is going to be skill-based combat. It's not like traditional MMO combat where you've just got a hotbar and whoever figures out the best way to maximize their abilities and minimize the cooldown times is going to be the best. In this one, it's actually going to take skill. It's going to be more like they haven't shown any combat yet. They haven't really talked about combat yet. But I think the expectation right now is something along the lines of like Mount and Blade, which is very skill-based and very fun. So hopefully that ends up being the case, but we'll see. That's just kind of general speculation right now. But it will be skill-based, and so if you're not particularly gifted at combat, unfortunately, that's one trade where you could really, really not the opposite of benefit. I'm trying to think of the word, but it would be very, very harmful to your pocketbook if you decided to be a champion when you weren't particularly good at combat. Where, as a blacksmith, you might not sell as much if you make poorer quality goods, but your character's not going to die quicker, and you're not going to have to constantly buy new characters quicker. So the champions, I think, are going to be fewer and further between. But who knows? I mean, we'll see. That's just, again, speculation on my part. So now let's look at the skills, and I think a lot of people are probably going to be interested in this. I am, because I think the way they set this up is pretty cool. Let's read into it, and then I'll talk about it. While players may have different different opinions about which skills make up the best champion, explorer, etc., every character is made up of a combination of skills that span 6 top-level categories. In general, champions will be made up predominantly of combat skills, explorers of survival skills, suppliers of gathering skills, and producers of crafting skills. However, the flexibility to customize is what makes Chronicles of Elyria truly unique. The remaining 2 skill trees, Deviant and Bardic, can be combined with any of the other 4 trees in order to create unique character personas. The details of each skill tree is listed below. So first we have combat. I think you guys can hopefully see that. No, you can't. There we go. So combat. Combat skills relates to a character's ability to fight, as you probably assumed. This includes fighting unarmed, with one-handed and two-handed weapons, with thrown and with ranged weapons, and utilizing additional tactics such as two-weapon fighting and sneak attacks. So I think that's dual-wielding confirmed right there. Survival. Survival skills relates to a character's ability to survive in the wild. This skill tree is about finding food and water, tracking prey, bandaging wounds, and navigating your way through the wilds. So you can see just by combining those first 2, I keep trying to point at stuff with my mouse, and I realize that you guys can't see my mouse right now. But combining those first 2, you could put together like an interesting hunter character. Just those 2 right there. And so now we have crafting. Crafting skills relates to a character's ability to produce goods. These can range from consumables such as food and drinks, armors and weapons, furniture, and fine jewelry. I'm probably going to be focusing mostly on armors and weapons, although I feel like if I end up somewhere coastal, I think shipbuilding is going to be really, really interesting too. And that's part of the reason why within each subset of crafting, you can specialize in many things without necessarily being like a master at everything. So just because you're not like a legendary smith doesn't mean you can't be like a really, really good sword maker. Or you might be the best sword blade maker, but not necessarily the best sword hilt maker. There's a lot of different pieces, and you can be better at some than others. But I want to focus, mostly on armor and weapons, but I'd also like to focus on woodworking for that reason, because not only would that be handy, if you needed to pitch in building houses and things like that. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of wooden structures in the game. But I think the shipbuilding mechanic will be really, really cool, because the sea seems to be very, I'm not sure what the right word is, because it's going to be very dangerous. The sea, I think they've mentioned sea monsters and things to that effect, but more importantly, if you die in the open ocean, there's a chance that you are permadead. And they've talked about removing it. There's on the fence, I think. But if that stays as it is, the ocean is going to be a very dangerous place, and you're not going to see a lot of people willing to take that risk. And so that naturally makes me very intrigued to go try it out. And so that's why when I was talking about what I wanted to do with my particular character, I thought like a Viking style character would be really interesting, because you do your stuff around town, you've got your job, but then maybe every week or two you decide, okay, it's raiding time, let's gather everybody up and we're going to go raid this other kingdom over here, because we're going to take all their stuff and leave before anybody can do anything about it. And it's another kingdom, so I mean they can't arrest us, They can fight us if they can catch us, but we're going to take their stuff and be on a boat before that's an issue. But yeah, so if you take that risk, you're going to be out in the open ocean, potentially. And there's a lot of stuff that could go wrong, but that makes that risk-reward mechanic so much more fulfilling when there's an actual risk involved. Alright, so before I gush too much on that, let's look at gathering. Okay, so gathering skills relates to a person's ability to gather and process raw materials. This includes skills involving the identification and handling of organic materials, such as plant and animal byproducts, as well as inorganic materials such as metal and gems. So if you want to be like a wilderness survival person, the survival skills with the gathering skills will probably be a really good combination for you to have. If you just want to go out, get lost in the wilderness and survive out there by yourself or with a small group, those are going to be two skills that you're really going to need. Obviously, having some people or having some combat skills of your own is going to be important too, but if you can't survive long term out there, it doesn't matter how well you can protect yourself if you end up starving to death. And so deviant skills, I think a lot of people will be interested in this, although the game seems like it's going to come down pretty hard on people who decide to go this route. It's not going to be impossible for you, but it is going to be difficult to get away with crimes, and so you got to think twice in this game about being a thief. So deviant skills are those less savory skills that may aid in surviving more urban areas if you don't mind the steep risk associated with pickpocketing, purse cutting, crafting false identities, and forging documents. I think they'll talk about this in a later design journal, but you can actually create disguises of people's identities. And so if there's like a particular noble that you don't like and you want to besmirch their reputation, you can actually steal some of their clothes, maybe get a wig that sort of looks like them, and pass yourself off as them. Maybe do some things that they wouldn't normally do that might get them into trouble, or just go around stealing. And if you're in their disguise, people will think that that particular person was stealing, not you. And until you get caught in that disguise, you could get that other person into quite a bit of trouble. There's also, I think, like cloaks where you can just kind of like pull, the cloak over your head, and so you won't necessarily be disguised as another person, but your identity will be concealed. And so nobody will know who it is until you're caught and, unmasked, but you can hide your own identity that way, even if you're not necessarily pretending to be somebody else. And then we have the bardic skills. So bardic skills are the skills of the academic and the performer. Whether it's performing music to embolden their allies, reading ancient languages, performing forensic analysis to track down a murderer, or creating finely detailed maps, the bardic tree is about information and discovery. I think a lot of people will be drawn to this just because this is probably the most unique skill tree in the game. You see plenty of the other ones in other games. For example, in the Elder Scrolls games, you have pretty much all of those. Maybe not the gathering so much because anybody can mine up ore or whatever, but in games like Skyrim and Oblivion, the only bardic skill you have is your speechcraft, and that's just going to give you better prices and let you do some easier stuff with the merchants. Where this game's actually going to let you do quite a bit with those skills. They're going to let you write better contracts, make music, write maps. You could be like the Illyrian version of like the CSI people, because there is going to be forensics in this game, so if somebody gets killed, there will be, some evidence of it, and you'll be able to maybe track down the killer and bring them to justice, or, maybe figure out who stole somebody's ancestral sword or something like that. But you'll be able to put those skills to use. You could be like a private investigator maybe or something. And yeah, I think that is really, really unique. And so I think a lot of people are going to be drawn to that. And then here we have another screenshot that's going to show those skills. We've got combat, survival, gathering, deviant, crafting, and bardic. And so you can see within combat that's being broken up further. The ones that we can see are melee, ranged, thrown, defensive, and tactics. But you can see that there is a little bit of a scroll bar here that looks to be able to scroll quite a bit. So there's probably a lot more subcategories in that combat section. But I do like that they have like tactics and things like that, because obviously being very proficient with a sword doesn't necessarily make you, a tactical genius. And same thing, being very good with close range weapons doesn't necessarily make you like a marksman archer either. So I like that they've subdivided this so thoroughly. I'd like to see what some of the others are, and especially for the other skills as well. But I think we'll probably see that at a later date. And so here we have the skill hierarchy. So beneath the top level of each skill tree, there are secondary and tertiary skills, which are referred to as parent skills. For example, below the combat tree there is melee, ranged, thrown, defensive, and tactics. I think there's more than that, but obviously we can see those 5. Each of these is a parent skill which contributes to the successful execution of skills below. Consider this tree. So we have the combat skill, within that we have the melee skill, and within that we have the brawling or unarmed skill, and within that we have striking and grappling. So not only will we be able to punch and kick, but it looks like you'll be able to wrestle as well, or at least tie people up. So if you're trying to be some kind of policeman, maybe not necessarily a policeman, but like a town guard or something, grappling might be nice, because you don't want to have to like kill everybody who steals something. So you can maybe rough them up and bring them to the ground so that you can control them and throw them into the dungeons. Just something a little bit less lethal than a sword. And then under the one-handed skill, we've got axes, swords, rapiers, maces, daggers. And so obviously your proficiency with different weapons will matter. You can't just be a master of all one-handed weapons like you can in Skyrim. And then two-handed, you can imagine there's probably going to be like pole arms, halberds, two-handed swords, two-handed axes, maybe like war hammers or something. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of two-handed weapons to choose from. And then you've got ranged and etc. Within range, you'll probably have crossbows and bows. I think thrown was its own thing, so thrown wouldn't be under there. But I think even down the line they've said toward the end of the game, because they have like a 10-year plan for the game, and the technology will, we've already talked about this, but the technology will grow as you get through the game, and so by the end of those 10 years you may start seeing muskets and stuff into the game, and I imagine those would fall into there too. And so your bow skills wouldn't necessarily translate to muskets if you ever get to that point in the game. Alright, so as an example, one-handed axes, swords, and rapiers are all type of one-handed combat. Improving in one-handed axes causes you to get better at one-handed combat. As a result, you'll see a small gain in all types of one-handed combat, including swords, rapiers, maces, daggers. This represents a generalized learning. So you'll get slightly better in everything under that one-handed skill, but you'll be better with the weapon that you're using to improve it. So now let's look at skill advancement. In an attempt to discourage endless grinding, we've instituted a system of diminishing returns, which we call rewarding for failure. If you attempt a skill that is too easy for you, such that you can never fail, you won't learn anything and will never improve. In contrast, if you attempt something just beyond your current skill level, you'll see a lot more character growth. After all, we learn a lot more from our failures than we do from our successes. And then here we have the skill tiers. Hopefully I can hurry up with this. We're starting to run a little bit long here. Skill mastery in Chronicles of Elyria is divided up into tiers with a percent mastery for each tier. The tiers are broken down as follows. So you've got novice, which is going to be 0 to 29%, apprentice, which is 30 to 39, journeyman is 40 to 49, expert is 50 to 59, artisan 60 to 69, renowned 70 to 79, master 80 to 89, grandmaster 90 to 99, and legendary is that final 1% for 100%. And then the percentage mastery reflects how proficient you are with specific skill, but also inversely reflects the percentage of people who will attain a specific skill tier. In other words, based on the amount of time it takes to level a skill, you can expect distribution of mastery across the server to look like the following. Let me scroll down so you guys can see that a little bit better. Oop, wrong thing. Sorry. Okay, so novice, 100% of all people can achieve novice in any given skill. For apprentice, only about 70% of those people. Journeyman only 60, expert 50, artisan 40, renowned 30, master 20, grandmaster 10, and then the legendary skill level, only 1% of everybody on the server can achieve the legendary skill level in that particular skill. And so that would be for the broader skill, like the one-handed weapons, or, you know, the armor smithing, not like swords or axes. So put differently, we calculated how long it would take people to reach legendary status over several lifetimes if they did nothing but work on advancing a skill. Obviously that's not going to happen. So as people train and improve, the Soulborn engine monitors progress and provides bonuses as necessary to ensure the top 1%, 10%, etc. will eventually reach the legendary or grandmaster tier. You should also note that God damn it. I'm just like stumbling all over my words. You should also note those skill tiers carry across reincarnations, and it will, in general, take a lifetime to become a master, multiple to become a grandmaster, and several to become legendary. So if you work on one skill your whole life, you can become a master at that skill. But to become a grandmaster or legendary, you'll obviously need to constantly work on those skills over several characters and inherit their abilities, and then use that skill ramp in the next character to build, and so on for a couple characters. And so you're not going to see anybody in one lifetime just, you know, bust their asses and rank up to legendary and become like the best blacksmith ever in one lifetime. It's just not going to happen. And then here we can see some animations of what blacksmithing might look like. It looks like he's hammering out maybe like a sword blade or something. And so minimum skill. All skills in Chronicles of Elyria require a minimum amount of training in order to perform. Attempting a skill with a skill rating of 0% will always result in failure. To attempt a skill for the first time, it'll be necessary to first receive training. There are a number of ways and places which to receive training. You have books. In most cases, it'll be possible to gain the minimum necessary training to begin practicing a skill simply by reading a book about it. In fact, in most cases, given a full encyclopedia on a subject, it is possible to raise a skill all the way to apprentice. Wow, that's kind of cool. So if you're more the learn by reading type, then there's your option right there. Beyond that, it requires specific rare text to raise your skill in this manner. So there'll be skill books just like in Skyrim. I keep going back to Skyrim, but I just love Skyrim. Where you pick up the book and read it, and you'll get like, oh, +1 one-handed. Poof. In this game, you'll have to probably read all the way through it, but we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Teaching. Characters with the scholarship skill can teach you other skills they know. This is generally an interactive process requiring both people to be online. However, sufficiently skilled characters can teach others via their OPC. So if you really want to be like a teacher, you can get good at the skill and then get your scholarship skill up, and then literally just while you're offline have your OPC teaching people how to do stuff and making money probably from doing it. To continue to gain knowledge through formal teaching, it's necessary the teacher have both sufficient high scholarship skill and sufficiently high proficiency in the skill they're trying to teach. So teaching scholarship skill might be the easiest route there. In this way, it gets harder to find good teachers the better and better you become. In addition, they often say the best way to learn is to teach. And while it's not 100% true here, teachers do develop their skills while teaching in the same way they did before as the student. So that's kind of cool. You do get a little bit of a bonus as the teacher as well. Obviously, you can probably charge people for that service, I imagine. And then we have observation. Having a skill above 0% allows you to gain some skill points simply by observation. I was going to say observing. Observation. Being near someone performing a skill enough times will result in a passive knowledge transfer. However, root level skills cannot be advanced beyond apprentice via observation alone. Okay, but there seems like a lot of ways to get you above 0%. And then finally, once your skill goes above 0%, you can begin practicing most skills on practice equipment. Obviously, this is going to be the best way to level up, but you do have a couple of alternatives to get you at least through the early stages and past that 0%. In the case of combat skills, this will obviously... I'm having a hard time here, guys. In the case of combat skills, this will often be practice dummies. For other types of skills, there are specific practice tools available which, through repeated use, can help slowly advance your skills. It's assumed people will use these practice tools while offline via their OPC, so you don't necessarily need to even be around to do it. You can log out, but before you do, you tell your character, hey, wail on this practice dummy for a day, and when I come back, you better be better at your sword skills. Practice tools cannot be used beyond journeyman skill level. Oh, so that's kind of a bummer. But at least you can get up to that journeyman level with a lot of passive stuff. One important thing to note, we believe time equals money. As a result, practicing crafting professions that would normally consume natural resources in other games does not do so in Chronicles of Elyria. So, let's see, practicing crafting professions that would normally consume natural resources does not. Okay, so if you want to learn your smithing, you can do so without necessarily burning up a bunch of iron on, swords that you're just going to throw away. That's cool. I do like that. But yeah, it looks like they've given you a lot of ways to kind of get through that little beginning push into whatever your profession is, and then obviously doing is going to be the best way to learn beyond that. But there is ways to sort of do it without, putting yourself at any, monetary or risk of livelihood. But beyond the journeyman level, you are going to have to get out there and do it, and so you'll need to, if you want to be, proficient in combat, you're going to need to get out there and fight some people. You can fight people without necessarily putting yourself in, bodily harm, because if you're fighting your friend for, like a sparring match, you don't really run the risk of getting, coup de grace and sent to the spirit realm, unless your friend's kind of a troll and decides to stab you when you're down or something. And obviously, as a crafter, you do run the risk of losing those materials and wasting some money. But you can get to a pretty decent level without putting yourself in any real risk. And that's cool, because it'll let more people try more different things, get a feel for what they like to do without necessarily being worried, oh, if I want to become a blacksmith and give up my old trade, I might waste a bunch of money getting into it. This will kind of alleviate that and eliminate a lot of barriers of entry for a lot of people, I think, which is good. So what's next? Later this week, we'll continue with part 2 of this 2-part series on skills and the skill system, and take a deeper look at skill trees, as well as go in depth into crafting and recipes. So more of the same sort of, but more of the nitty gritty. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you guys are too. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please feel free to share my videos however you guys see fit. And if you feel like getting involved in the Chronicles of Elyria community, you can click the link just below my my window here and sign up there. If you decide to sign up, it would be very kind of you to use my friend code. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys back here for part 9.